everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to start a new series which is based on system design for Azure, and first we'll cover for beginners and slowly we'll move to intermediate level. So today is day 1, question 1. So let's get started. So I'll take you to the question. So the scenario which let's say the interviewer has given you is you're working as a data engineer for a retail company, and the company receives a CSV file which contains the daily sales transactions data from its on-premises system. So those who are not aware of what is the difference between on-premises and cloud, it's basically you can think of it as on-premises is something a customer or a person would handle everything on its own. So like building the application, maintaining it, supporting it, every single cost goes to the client's pocket. It has to go out of the client's pocket. And for cloud, when you move to cloud, you only pick only those services which you require to make your application run. So it's basically like a difference between owning your own car versus renting a hired car. So for own car, you have to pay for the petrol, you have to pay for the maintenance, you have to pay for the cleaning, and when you rent a hired car to go somewhere, you just pay that much money for the number of kilometers you have traveled. So this is a very basic difference between cloud and on-premise. So coming back to the scenario, so this file is generated every night, and these are the columns that it contains. Okay, and the business wants the data to be available in Power BI, which is a reporting tool, every morning by 8 a.m. So the timings they have given. So the ask is to design a simple Azure-based pipeline, data pipeline, and how would you ingest the daily sales CSV file, process the data, store the transform data, and make it available for Power BI reporting. Okay, so just to mention, this question is for beginners to how to exactly do it step by step, and what are the exact services from Azure you need to make this work. Okay, so before even starting, what I want to say is that when we design a pipeline in any cloud, Azure or AWS or GCP, so there are certain steps to it. Okay, so first is ingesting the data from whatever source the data is in. Second is you store the data after you ingest it, right? So you take the data from somewhere, you have to store it somewhere. And then once you store it, you need to clean up the data, so which we call as the transformation process. So clean or transform the data. And once that is done, we store the cleaned data into another destination. At times it can be a DB if the data volume is very low, and if the data volume is very high, we can do it in a data warehouse. Okay, and usually the reporting tools are connected to the database or the data warehouse. So in that case, you can connect this to your Power BI or Tableau. So this can directly access the data warehouse tables or the database tables where the cleaned tables are stored. These are the 4 steps of designing a data pipeline. Major steps. So there can be very more subparts to it. But for a beginner level, this should be enough. Okay, so how my architecture would look like when I do it in Azure. So you see that as per the requirement of the question, the data is on-premises server, right? So in Azure, we have a tool called Azure Data Factory. So this is an orchestration tool which can be used to ingest the data from any source. Okay, so in the upcoming videos, I will show you what are the different sources ADF can fetch data from. So any source it can fetch the data from. Okay, so once it has ingested, so this is done, then it has to store it somewhere. It is bring the data from the source and store it somewhere. For that, we have the ADLS Gen 2. So this is for the storage perspective. ADLS full form is Azure Data Lake Storage, and these is very common, or you can relate it to any kind of storage, like if you have worked on Linux or Unix or in big data on premise, it is HDFS. So this is just for the storage purpose. Okay, so storage is done. Now we have to clean or transform the stored data from ADLS. So Azure Databricks is the powerful tool which can be used in this respect. So clean and transform is done, and then once it is done, then you can store it back to ADLS Gen 2. So these you can refer to as different folders or directories. So you can just think of it like you have a main storage. Inside that you have multiple directories. So inside those directories you can store the data, and then you can access it anytime you want. Now after it is stored in ADLS Gen 2, the reporting tool, which is Power BI, that can be directly connected to it. Okay, so this is the overall architecture. So on premises it was there, then it connected to Azure Data Factory, then ADLS Gen 2 for storage, then you have Azure Databricks for the transformation, and then you have to basically store the transform data somewhere, which can be an ADLS Gen 2 folder, or it can be a data warehouse table also. It depends on what are the licenses available in your project. Okay, and finally the reporting tool connects to this. So now coming back to all the services that we have used, and this is mainly a point for beginners, so don't get overwhelmed by which service I have to learn and which service I have to know. So just go by the process. Whenever you have to design a pipeline, these are the basic steps that you need to follow. Okay, and as you advance more deeper, then there can be subparts to it. Okay, so I'll just go through a document I have prepared for this question specifically. So first we use the ADF, right, Azure Data Factory. So that will be used to orchestrate the pipeline, and it will connect to the on-premises environment also. So on-premises environment can be anything. It can be in a SharePoint location, it can be in a file server location, it can be in a SQL server, anything. But ADF will connect to every single thing. There are certain aspects called linked services, which you can basically align and create and set up the connection to connect to the exact on-premise environment you want. And also one more thing is there, for an on-premises source, it has to run with an Azure Integration Runtime with a Self-hosted Integration Runtime. So we normally refer it to as SHIR, and integration runtime is a very important part in Azure Data Factory. So it can be used to securely access, because there can be security issues when you're connecting to a system outside of your cloud, right? So it needs to have the security protocol set up. So oftentimes and most of the times SHIR is recommended. And then in that case, once that linked service is created, and to both the on-premise source and ADF is connected, then it would pick up the daily CSV file from that location, and it will copy into the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Okay, so this is about the ingestion and the orchestration. Now coming to the storage. So we are going to use this. The second point is that we are going to keep the original CSV files in the raw layer. Okay, so when we say raw layer, it's nothing, it's just a folder inside the storage. Okay, and inside all of that, it's just to track it that okay, these are the raw files which came from this system, and it is stored in this layer. Now there can be, as I said before, there can be subparts to it, like you can store the files in the naming, different naming convention, as in which date the file arrived. You can automate the entire thing, that when this file arrived, I will prefix the date time characters in my file name. So those are very advanced level ingestion, which we will cover in the upcoming videos. Okay, and also one more thing, in my personal experience, I wouldn't immediately transform the data. So first I would either preserve it in the raw or the bronze layer. So just because I don't want to lose it in the Azure system itself, it shouldn't happen that immediately, like as soon as it came, I transformed the data with handling duplicate values or handling null values and all of that, and then we lost the data somehow. So we don't want to go back to the client asking for, can you send the this dates file, we lost it, can you send it from your system? We don't want to do that. So since we are designing a pipeline in Azure as a whole, we want to keep the original files we are taking from the source as is, and going forward we want to transform it. Okay, then we have Databricks to read the CSV, to clean the invalid records, to handle null values, all kind of transformations which will be required. Remove the duplicates. What are the business transformations? They will, let's say they want to calculate percentages, or they want to calculate certain other aspects or KPIs or metrics, whatever. So based on that, we'll apply the business transformations and we'll create the curated data sets, which is basically the final level of the data sets. So those can be stored as curated data tables in ADLS, or we can store as data tables in a marketplace like a data warehouse also. Okay, so Azure Databricks is mainly to transform the data. So now we ingested the data, we stored the raw data in ADLS, we transformed the data, we stored the transformed data back into Azure landscape only, and then finally we have the Power BI. So in Power BI, it will consume the curated data for the dashboards and the reporting purpose. So basically the overall flow, as you see, it comes from on-premises, ADF takes it, brings it to ADLS raw, Databricks takes it from ADLS raw, sends it to ADLS curated or DWH, and then finally Power BI. So this is a very simple flow and like a data pipeline you can create as a beginner level. Now everything is done. What do we want to do? We want to monitor the system, right? That in any of it, what is the pipeline status, if any activity has failed in the EDF or not, how long is it taking, how many records have been processed, and finally if any step fails, how are we going to solve it? Okay, so all of these will come under monitoring. Okay, and also we need to make sure that same file shouldn't be processed multiple times, right? Otherwise it's just going to keep on appending itself. So those are like advanced level transformations that we need to be doing. So this is overall what we need to focus on if we are learning system design on any cloud. So today I talked about Azure for beginner level. It can be anything, on any other cloud. So it's a very simple Azure system design. So now, just as a, to answer a beginner question, you don't need 15 Azure services. So we start with the source, then go on to the ingestion, we then go on to the storage, transformation, consumption, which is Power BI, and then monitor the entire process. So that is the kind of thought process interviewers are actually looking for. So from this as a base to create for the data pipeline, there can be multiple questions on a deeper level, let's say for the ingestion part only or for the transformation part only, but you can consider this as a base pillar on your data pipeline, like system design pipeline questions, that where does the data come from, how do I ingest it, where do I store it, how do I transform it, where does the business consume it, how do I monitor it. So this is like a skeleton you can think of. Okay, so next session or next question will have similarly for beginners, but we'll use a different source like APIs to consume the data from. This one was CSV file, so you can use ADF, but when we are talking about APIs, different Azure services can also be used. So we'll mostly talk about that. So thank you for watching my video. Have a very nice day, and if you like it, please follow and subscribe and share with your colleagues and friends. Thank you so much.